All right, you know the one, I know the one, we've all seen it. It's that ridiculously loud, super chaotic skeleton just furiously banging on a shield. It is the perfect, pure, unadulterated sound of RAAAH. And people are using it for everything. Like, here's a post from X that captioned it, "My stomach the second I'm in a quiet public space." It got like over 300,000 likes. Because it perfectly captures that very specific internal chaos we all feel sometimes. But here's the thing. Behind all the brain rot and the yelling, there's actually a fascinating story. This isn't just some random meme. Nope. It's a perfect case study for how the internet actually works right now, how our culture gets built, how it fights for our attention, and, what happens to it at the end of its life. So first things first, let's be clear. This meme wasn't born, it was built. It was basically pieced together from all these forgotten corners of gaming and internet history, kind of like a digital Frankenstein's monster. Just look at how this all came together. The skeleton itself, that's an animation from the game Skyrim that's been kicking around on YouTube since 2014. The roar, that's a TikTok sound from 2022. And that metal clang, that's the crowbar sound from the classic game Half-Life. For years, these pieces were just floating around out there, completely separate. It wasn't until late 2025 that a YouTuber named robparx had the brilliant idea to stitch them all together, and that's when it just blew up. So the big takeaway here is that this massive viral hit is really just a remix. It's a perfect storm of repurposed culture. And that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about how modern memes are made. They don't just spring out of nowhere. They're assembled from the cultural scraps lying around the internet. Okay, but just being created isn't enough, right? For any meme to go viral today, it has to survive a pretty brutal competition. You gotta think of the internet as this massive digital jungle where countless memes are all fighting tooth and nail for one single thing. And that brings us to this really fascinating idea from a research paper called meme ecology. The theory basically treats memes like a biological species. They live in a habitat, which is social media, and they all compete for one very, very limited resource, our collective attention. And let me tell you, this habitat is getting incredibly crowded. This chart, which is based on data from Reddit, just gives you a little taste of the explosion of content over a single decade. The sheer volume of stuff being posted has gone up exponentially. The whole environment is just packed. But, and this is the paradox, even with a literally infinite amount of content to scroll through, the total amount of human attention hasn't changed. We all still have the same 24 hours in a day. And that creates this incredibly intense competition for survival. So what happens when you have more and more species all fighting for the exact same finite resource? What's the real consequence of these digital Hunger Games? Well, this is what happens. Researchers found that the average lifespan of a meme has dropped, dramatically over time. To even get noticed at all, they have to burn way brighter and way faster. In this cutthroat environment, memes are basically living faster and dying younger. So how in the world does a meme survive this chaos? Well, it's about a lot more than just being funny. It has to speak a very specific shared cultural language. Now, linguists have a really fancy term for this. They call it a multimodal construction. But really all that means is that a meme's meaning isn't just in the picture. It's not just in the text. The meaning is actually created by the combination of the image, the text, and the shared knowledge that we, the audience, bring to it. Let's break that down with our skeleton meme. Pretty much anyone can look at it and get the basics, right? It's frantic, it's loud, it's intense. Okay, cool. But for the in-group, the people who are in on the joke, there are way deeper layers. Knowing that the skeleton is from Skyrim, that the clang is from Half-Life, and that the roar is that specific TikTok sound, it adds a whole other level of meaning. It's an inside joke. And this isn't just some theory, It happens in the real world. Here's a quote from an artist, English Butter, who was hired to design an official emblem for the game For Honor. She actually snuck a meme from the community, this thing called the Conqueror's RAAAH sound, into her design as a little joke for herself. And the game developers, they loved it so much, it became part of the final official emblem. So you see, this shared language is actually incredibly powerful. It's what turns a simple joke into a real cultural identifier. It builds a sense of community, and it can even bridge the gap between fans and the people who create the stuff they love. Which brings us to the final, and maybe the strangest, part of our skeleton's whole journey. What happens when a meme survives the competition and completely saturates the culture? What's next? I mean, where does it go after it peaks? Well, in today's attention economy, the finish line looks, well, a little different than you might expect. It becomes this. A meme coin. Yeah, the RAAAH meme, our chaotic little skeleton, was literally turned into a speculative financial asset on the Solana blockchain. Its cultural value was converted one-to-one into currency. This, right here, is often the end of the line for a meme's cultural journey. So let's just recap the wild life cycle we've just mapped out. A modern meme gets assembled from cultural scraps. Then, it has to survive a brutal competition for our limited attention. It spreads through a shared, unspoken language that builds a community around it. It burns out way faster than it would have a decade ago. And finally, its cultural relevance gets converted into financial value. It's a fascinating and just an incredibly fast process. It really shows us how culture is born, how it fights to survive, and how it eventually dies in our digital age. But it also leaves us with a pretty big question. In a world where our digital culture is accelerating, where memes burn out faster than ever, what important pieces of our collective memory are we losing along the way? What gets forgotten in the endless churn for the next viral hit?